There are many organizations, government, nonprofits, community groups that really see the need profoundly for change, that the existing system is not working, that there is too many folks that are marginalized and sidelined and overlooked. And I think there are lots of organizations that don't know what to do with that. The history of the modern welfare state is really a post-World War II phenomenon. People came back from the war and we started investing in things like national healthcare systems and social benefits. And they really were designed as contingencies for when bad stuff happens to us.
We understand why those safety nets exist. The difficulty, I think, that InWithForward and ourselves have is that focusing only on basic needs misses the boat on what it means to be human.
Systems change is such a elusive thing. Not a lot of people can actually come with the tools and the conditions that it really takes for it to happen.
When we first started InWithForward, I think we had a few different theories about what wasn't working in the system. One of the theories was that organizations were so under-resourced to reimagine the future. On the other side, there was this kind of growing social innovation community that had all these methods and approaches for trying to disrupt the status quo, but a lot of that stuff felt really conceptual and ungrounded. One of our first projects was in a domestic violence shelter between Belgium and the Netherlands in Apeldoorn. A lot of our work was shadowing these paid professional social workers who were charged with helping women who were fleeing really violent domestic situations. They literally had their office overlooking the shelter. It was this kind of classic surveillance model. Physically, that space was a stark reminder of what we've set up, which is, again, a system that is designed to do important work and yet often misses the mark. We've kind of increasingly got these layers and lenses of, people are problems. We need to fix them. We need to monitor them. We need to assess them. We need to diagnose them. So to ask the question, are we doing good? In some ways is like the hardest hitting question to ask. And the organizations we were working with in the Netherlands weren't quite ready for those questions. And that's really what led us on this pursuit to find other organizations that would be willing to go there, that would be willing to ask these deeply personal questions.
In our policies, in our training, in our procedures, in our standards manuals, health and safety dominates. I think in the accreditation standards alone, health and safety shows up like something like 450, 460, 480 times. Flourishing doesn't show up once.
I literally stumbled into Gord Tellick, who is the director of innovation at Possibilities, a large disability services provider. What struck me about Gord was right away, he wanted to go to the moral questions. He managed to convince two other organizations, Possibilities, his own organization, Kinsight, and Burnaby Association for Community Inclusion, to kind of do a trial run with us. One of the organizations, Bocce, manages a social housing complex in Burnaby where folks with disabilities and newcomers and a whole range of humans live, and there was an empty apartment, and we thought this is a great opportunity. What if we moved into this apartment complex for 3 months and got to know all of our neighbors and really built up a picture of everyday lives of folks with and without disabilities?
What we found was that people were really missing opportunities to engage with the community, opportunities for learning and growth. People were also feeling like the best times of their lives were behind them rather than ahead of them. There's very little things to look forward to.
We used that to generate a set of ideas for how could we tackle the social isolation and loneliness that really was at the core of so many people's day-to-day experiences. And then could we move those ideas into action?
And so we developed Kudos, which was bringing people with and without disabilities together for in-person, one-on-one experiences. And that ran quite well for about 7 to 8 years, but we were really experiencing some pain points with Kudos. And I think the biggest pain point for us was that it was becoming very much programmatic. It was starting to really resemble systems and existing structures. Really, the things that we needed to report to funders were around service delivery hours. We were, I think, reinforcing stigma by having people need eligibility criteria in order to go on experiences, and those were folks with a disability, and then it was oftentimes people without a disability hosting. And so it was still very much this segregation It was a challenging time to think about what do we do with it, but the decision was made to essentially put it to rest, to kill it. We really felt like we needed a fresh start.
We've learned that projects aren't the unit of change. Really, what is the unit of change is sticking around long enough. It's persistence and it's evading capture. It's very hard to enable those models to not go back into the boxes that they came from.
The elevator pitch for Kiriko, at its heart, it's about community building. It's about having more moments of connection.
Meet Vicky. She's really into cooking, K-pop, and finding her place in the world, whether at school, work, or on YouTube. She found Kiriko and started booking experiences, mindfulness meditation, exploring Haida culture, and the physics of light. It wasn't long before she realized that she was a community member and could host experiences for others. So she offered up something she loves, making homemade French fries. That's how she met Sam. Like Vicky, Sam was trying to figure out how they fit on this planet. They'd never really gotten to know somebody with a disability before, on equal footing.
The shift was really moving from thinking about Kudos as a service and Kiriko as a tool for change and something that could be accessed across the province and not something that had to be embedded or situated within an organization.
I think my mom and I and everyone just kind of assumed that the course of my life was going to be, I was going to need a lot of support, not thinking I would ever get to this point of independence. Before Kiriko, I was 140 pounds heavier, no motivation, no friends, no ability to do transit. I mean, there was a lot of anxiety. I tell people, Kiriko gave me a purpose. It gave me a reason to want to get off the couch. The connection to good people became worth trekking outside and trying harder things.
For me, Kiriko, it's a space that is helping me remember what it means to be human. It's a space for me to heal, and it's a space for me to grow. For a long time, when I was younger, I was chasing the money. I was starting to become a person that I was not proud of. I was becoming someone that was cold. And I reached a point where I was like, I need to change that. I need to go back to the basics, human connections versus money. So by being exposed to these experiences, I'm allowing myself to learn more about me while connecting with others that may be also going through that journey.
Why does Kiriko matter?
Wow. It's an emotional question of why Kiriko matters. I need a minute. Yeah, I think Stride Place, they really inspired Kudos. And we really tried to get people to be engaged with Kudos. And it was really hard, Most of the people that we met there weren't able to be involved. And that felt really unfair. And so I think Kiriko, for me, is something that everybody can get involved in.
In 2017, the city of Edmonton, they came to us with a problem around building a new wellness center. We were invited to come do some lived experience research on the ground with street-involved folks in Edmonton.
Lots of people like that come a dime a dozen, so you gotta really stand out. But they were very consistent and they stood out. There's no hidden agenda. I said, these people need to be heard.
I felt very pressured to come back with a wellness center. I remember saying to Sarah, please tell me that some of those people asked for a one-stop shop social service center. And she said, Susan, not one person asked for that. I said, so what does this mean? She said, ethically, you don't have any justification. And I was like, I was very disappointed, but now I understand why that is.
Soul Loss is about community care for grief and loss comes from this observation that for so many people who are quite marginalized, grief and loss is often not acknowledged, and it can be really stigmatizing. It can create a lot of sense of disconnection and isolation.
And then they landed on this role called the loss tender.
It's somebody who listens and who walks alongside you, who is not a professional therapist of any kind, who is there when you need them, and has this creative slate of activities to kind of draw you into as a way to kind of move some of your feelings, some of your grief.
I have a lady I lost just over 2 years, and she OD'd. It's gotta be the right person that you share your grief with, or you just don't share it. You go along with it, be passive in it, but not very assertive.
Do you feel like you found the right people to share your grief with?
Yeah, I do.
The people who get involved in it really get involved with it and want to keep being involved with it. So you know that something's powerful if people keep engaging with it past the point of having fulfilled their contract. We have a proof of concept. And it's still a really vulnerable time for a prototype like this because we're still challenging a lot of logics and values of the current system. And so if we don't create a protected space for these prototypes, they can easily be reabsorbed back into the dominant way of doing things. What makes them special and distinct can really be co-opted. And yet there's not a lot of funding at this point. So it's a difficult time.
It all takes funding, and it all takes a system to allow the work to happen. I do feel powerless. A number of the people that work in this area, including InWithForward, is kind of like, we're just going to keep plodding ahead. And yes, we know we are going to be reaching these obstacles, but if we don't keep doing this work, the system will never change.
Today, we are celebrating our 10-year anniversary in Canada with an exhibition. In the space today, you can encounter and experience all of the pieces of work where the conditions have been right to be able to get to some level of systems change. Systems change is quite a lot like a forest. And so mushrooms are these like incredible humans, everyday folks that have ingenuity and ideas and have often been marginalized or overlooked by systems. And the kind of organizations and institutions are the trees, and they have a lot of the resource. In our early days, a lot of our work was about trying to graft new ideas, new solutions onto trees, trying to create a new branch of a tree, a new department, a new program, a new service to be delivered by the tree. What we've learned is that it's actually about creating the space between where we're creating networks of people and where organizations are helping to resource that. They're part of the forest ecosystem, but the goal isn't to bring everything back into the tree. So I think for me, the next 10 years are really about like, how do we rethink the structure of the work and the flow of finance in this space? How do we really see so that folks like Ross and folks like Susan Coward are in legitimate relationship with each other? That for me is part of success, is not that the funders fund something and we go do something, but actually we are bridging networks across class, across disability, across race, across all of these lines of difference that keep us separated, and really figuring out how do we do things together in a different way.